Do you understand what that feels like? To work twice as hard, to exceed expectations consistently, to bring real positive value everywhere you go, and still have people assume that you only got to where you are because of your skin color? Welcome to the Kindness Extremist Podcast. I'm your host, Shola Richards, aka Brother Teresa. I've spoken to tens of thousands of people all over the world about the importance of kindness. And I am obsessed with how we can bring more kindness into our daily lives and restore balance to a deeply unbalanced world. Every episode, I'll give you 3 practical strategies to create a kinder world, and I'll do it in 30 minutes or less. No fluff, just valuable, actionable content that you can implement in your life immediately after listening to help you actively create a kinder world. There's no time to waste. Let's dive in. What's up, my friend? Welcome back to episode 43 of the Kindness Extremist Podcast. I'm your host, Shola Richards, aka Brother Teresa. And today we're going to dive headfirst into a topic that has become one of the most misunderstood, mischaracterized, and weaponized phrases in our modern discourse. I'm talking about DEI. That's diversity, equity, inclusion for the uninitiated. And I'm releasing this episode on a very intentional day, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, a day when we honor a man who dedicated his life to the fight for justice, equity, and for the powerful belief that all people deserve to be treated with dignity. Now, here's the thing that drives me absolutely bonkers. Every year, unfailingly around this time of year, I watch people who are openly hostile to DEI trot out Dr. King's iconic words, which were, quote, "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character," end quote. And they use that quote, that beautiful aspirational quote, as a weapon against the very work that Dr. King gave his life for. They'll say things like, "See, MLK wanted us to be colorblind. He would have been against DEI." Y'all, the audacity, the absolute audacity. Let me be clear about something. Dr. King's quote was a dream, an aspiration for a future that had not yet been achieved. It was not a declaration that racism was over and that we should all pretend that systemic barriers don't exist. Dr. King was a fierce advocate for dismantling the systems that kept people from being judged fairly on their character and their abilities in the first place. Using Dr. King's words to fight against equity is not just wrong, it's a desecration of his legacy. So on this day, as we honor Dr. King's legacy, I refuse to let that narrative go unchallenged. Whew. Okay, so with all that said, I'm very glad that you're still here. More than that, I'm really glad that you chose to listen to a podcast episode with the letters DEI in the title, because these days, even that act is a stretch for many people. So yes, I'm very grateful that you're here and you're willing to give your favorite kindness extremist a chance to break down this important topic. In this episode, I plan on laying out my case that if you care about kindness, real kindness, the kind that requires strength, courage, and a willingness to see the full humanity in every person we encounter, then you must also believe in the importance of DEI. And as I'm sure you likely know, over the past few years, DEI has become a punching bag for people who don't understand it, a scapegoat for problems it didn't create, and a dog whistle for those who want to maintain the status quo. And I'm not going to lie, y'all, it is so depressing watching good faith efforts to create fairness get twisted into something sinister by people who either don't understand what they're talking about, or worse, by people who understand exactly what they're doing. But here's the thing. I am not backing down, not even a little bit, because if we're serious about creating a kinder world, we cannot do it while leaving people behind. So in today's episode, I'm going to destroy 3 of the most dangerous myths about DEI and show you why, if you truly believe in kindness, you should not only support DEI, you should be fighting for it with everything that's in your heart and soul. First, I'm going to cover why DEI is not the enemy of meritocracy, it's actually its greatest ally. Second, I'll explore what DEI actually includes, because I promise you, it's so much broader than what you've been led to believe. And finally, we'll talk about the path forward and why open hearts and open minds are the antidote to the division that's tearing apart our world right now. So buckle up, my friend. This one's going to challenge some assumptions and probably ruffle some feathers. And if that makes you uncomfortable, that's a good thing. As always, and unless you're new here, the Kindness Extremist Podcast isn't about staying locked into our comfort zones. It's about doing the hard work of challenging ourselves to think deeper and to do better. And since you're still listening, that means that you're one of the real ones who's up for that challenge. And I appreciate you for that. Okay, let's get to it. Let me start by addressing the biggest myth about DEI. Is one that I hear constantly from people who really should know better. DEI is just a cheat code to give unqualified people things they don't deserve. Y'all, this one drives me nuts. Before I explain why this is so wrong, let me just point out what's actually happening here. This argument is a textbook example of what's called a straw man fallacy. In my book, Civil Unity, I spent a lot of time breaking down logical fallacies because they're one of the biggest obstacles to productive discourse. Okay, really quickly. A straw man fallacy is when someone misrepresents their opponent's position by creating a weaker, distorted version of the argument and then attacks that fake version instead of engaging with the real version of the argument. It is absolutely crazy making. So when someone says DEI is just a cheat code to give unqualified people things they don't deserve, they're not actually attacking what DEI is. They've created a ridiculous caricature, this imaginary scenario where companies are just freely handing out jobs and promotion to random unqualified people based solely on demographics. That's not DEI. That's a straw man. And as you can imagine, though, it is a whole lot easier to get people riled up against that ridiculous straw man argument than it is to engage in an honest conversation about removing barriers and ensuring fair evaluation. For the love of all things kind and positive, please don't be one of the people who are falling for this nonsense. So let me be crystal clear about what DEI actually is, because as mentioned, somewhere along the line, the definition got twisted beyond recognition. DEI aims to level the playing field by removing barriers like implicit bias, for example, to ensure that all people have an equal shot to be considered for opportunities and that they're being evaluated fairly on their merits. Let me say that again. Evaluated fairly on their merits, not given things they don't deserve, not handed opportunities over more qualified candidates, evaluated fairly on their merits. If you love meritocracies, if you believe the best person should get the job, the promotion, or the opportunity, then guess what? You should love DEI, because without DEI, meritocracy is a myth. It's a fairy tale that we tell ourselves to feel better about systems that haven't been historically fair in the first place. Listen to this common scenario and tell me if this sounds like a meritocracy to you. Picture a company, it can be any company, it can be your company, who knows, that prides itself on being a pure meritocracy. The executives say this phrase with their chest puffed out like a badge of honor. They're absolutely convinced that they only hire the best of the best based solely on qualifications and performance. No bias, no favoritism, just cold, hard merit. But let's look under the hood and see what's actually happening. The company recruits almost exclusively from a handful of universities where the executives happen to go to school. Also, the resumes are reviewed by managers who, consciously or not, favor candidates who remind them of themselves when they were a new college graduate. There's a phrase that's used internally during hiring discussions. You've probably heard it before: culture fit. Do you know what that really means, though? It means people who make us comfortable because they're similar to us. And here's the problem with this. Unfortunately, candidates who communicate differently, or who have non-traditional backgrounds, or who simply don't feel familiar, get passed over, not because they lack talent, to be clear, because they don't match an unspoken template. So yeah, about that merit stuff, please, come on. What I'm describing is a deeply entrenched system for hiring people who already look, talk, and think like the people doing the hiring. And the truly talented candidates who didn't fit that mold, they never even made it through the door. Those candidates didn't fail on merit. They were filtered out before they even had a chance to demonstrate their merit. Now, here's my question for you. Does that scenario sound familiar? Because if you spent any time in corporate America or any large organization, you've probably seen some version of this play out. And that's exactly the problem that DEI is trying to solve. Because here's the truth that we need to sit with and really marinate in. Talent is equally distributed throughout humanity. The problem is that opportunities are not. That's not a political statement. It's not. That's just reality. Look around, talk to people, listen to their stories. You'll find brilliant people everywhere who never got a fair shot because they didn't know the right people, they didn't go to the right schools, they were too young, they're too old, or they didn't fit the unspoken image of what success should, air quotes, look like. DEI exists to close that gap, to ensure that well-qualified people from all walks of life aren't overlooked because of factors that have nothing to do with their abilities. In my book, Go Together, I define these terms very specifically because precision matters. Diversity is any dimension that can be used to differentiate groups and people from one another. For example, age, expertise, gender identity, mental health, national origin, neurodivergence, physical ability, race, religion, sexual orientation, so much more. Equity is fair treatment, impartiality, and equal possibility for access and advancement for every individual. And inclusion is a state of feeling valued, respected, and supported. When you put those together, what you get isn't reverse discrimination or handouts. What you get is a system that actually delivers on the promise of meritocracy, the promise that the best person will actually win, regardless of where they started. And let me address something else while I'm at it. There's a growing body of research suggesting that diversity drives better business outcomes. Studies have found that inclusive teams make better decisions, that diverse companies are better positioned to understand and capture new markets, and that organizations with diverse leadership tend to outperform their less diverse peers. Now, I get it, correlation isn't the same as causation, and researchers continue to debate the details of these findings. But here's what's undeniable. When you systematically exclude talented people from opportunities, you're leaving value on the table. This isn't about charity or political correctness. It's about common sense. When you remove barriers and let talent rise based on actual merit, everyone wins. So here's your first practical kindness takeaway of the episode. The next time that someone tells you that DEI is anti-meritocracy, ask them this question. How do you ensure that the most qualified candidates aren't being filtered out before they even get a chance to prove themselves? Watch their face. Listen to their answer. If they can't answer that question convincingly, they're not defending meritocracy. What they're really doing is defending the status quo and hoping that you won't notice. All right, let's tackle the second major myth, and this one is particularly frustrating because it reveals just how narrow the public understanding of DEI has become, thanks to people who have a vested interest in keeping you misinformed. Here's the myth. DEI is just about giving advantages to Black and brown people. Some folks even take it a step further and claim that DEI means the exclusion of white people. Y'all, I cannot stress this enough. Both of these are completely, utterly, spectacularly wrong. And I would argue that these beliefs are being promoted by people who either haven't done their homework or who benefit from keeping us divided and angry. Let me break down what DEI actually encompasses, and I want you to honestly ask yourself if you've ever benefited from these things. And for real, be honest with yourself. Okay, wheelchair ramps and accessible entrances for people with physical disabilities. That's DEI. If you've ever pushed a stroller up a ramp, used one while recovering from surgery, or helped an elderly relative navigate a building, you've benefited from DEI. How about this one? Private dedicated spaces for new mothers to pump breast milk while at work? That's DEI. These accommodations help working mothers continue their careers while caring for their children. Here's another one. Workplace accommodations for neurodivergent employees who think and process information differently? That's DEI. Things like flexible work arrangements, quiet spaces, or different communication methods help people with ADHD, autism, dyslexia, or other neurological differences to excel while they're at work. Here's another one. Efforts to destigmatize mental health challenges for veterans and others. That's DEI. Programs that support veterans struggling with PTSD, depression, anxiety, and other mental health conditions are not only a way to help them stay employed and productive, it's a way to honor their service to our beautiful country. Here's another one. Baby changing tables in men's restrooms, because we finally recognize that fathers also change diapers too. And yes, you better believe that's DEI, and you should be celebrating this one. I mean, well, unless you're one of the less than enlightened folks listening to this podcast who believe that only women should be changing diapers. And believe it or not, these people do exist. Keep it moving. Also, flexible arrangements for people caring for aging parents, that's also DEI. As our population ages, more and more workers are juggling careers with caregiving responsibilities. Here's another one. Religious accommodations so people can observe their faith traditions? You guessed it, that's DEI. Whether it's time off for holidays, dietary accommodations, or space for prayer, these considerations help people from all faiths participate fully in the workplace. How about this one? Age discrimination protections ensuring that experienced workers aren't pushed out of the workforce simply because they're older. Are you sensing a theme? Yes, that's DEI as well. These protections help people who still have years of valuable contributions to make. Do you see what I'm getting at here? DEI is about ensuring equitable treatment and the inclusion of everyone, not just some people, not just people who look a certain way, everyone, including you, including your family members, including people who you love. So when you're against DEI, you're not just taking a political stance, you're actively opposing accommodations and considerations that benefit people across every demographic, including you, including the people who you love. For real, sit with that for a moment. Let me get personal. As a proud girl dad, I think about this constantly. I am certainly not Dr. King, but man, I got a dream too. I have a dream that my daughters will enter workplaces where they're evaluated on their abilities, not held back by outdated assumptions about what women can or should do. I have a dream that they will consistently have access to the same opportunities as everyone else, not because they're given handouts, because the barriers that would have blocked them have been removed. And yes, I have a dream that they will work in environments where their ideas are heard, their contributions are valued, and their paths to advancement aren't being limited by someone else's biases. That is not special treatment. That's basic fairness. That's what every parent should want for their children. And I need to address something that hits very close to home. Despite being educated, despite being hardworking, despite being a kindness extremist and humility suspended, pretty damn good at what I do, it has not stopped me from being labeled a DEI hire, air quotes, whenever I fall short of perfection. Do you understand what that feels like? To work twice as hard, to exceed expectations consistently, to bring real positive value everywhere you go, and still have people assume that you only got to where you are because of your skin color? It is equal parts demoralizing and exhausting to be held to a standard that many of my peers are not held to. One mistake, one off day, one human moment, and suddenly that's proof that I didn't earn my position? And man, I know I'm not alone in this experience. And if you're listening to this and you can relate, I see you, I hear you, and I'm fighting for us. So here's your second kindness strategy of the episode. Make a list of accommodations and considerations that have benefited you or someone you love in the workplace or in public spaces. I'm willing to bet that the list is longer than you initially thought. Many of those accommodations exist because of DEI efforts. Use that list to remind yourself and others that DEI isn't about them, air quotes. It's about all of us. Hey, fellow kindness extremists, it's me, Shola. If you're picking up what I'm putting down, if you're mowing what I'm growing, if you're smelling what I'm stepping in. Okay, I'll stop. If you're enjoying what you're listening to so far, I would love it if you would take a moment to hit the subscribe button and leave a rating and a review. Those incredibly kind acts go so far in helping me to reach as many people as possible who will join the movement to actively create a kinder world. I appreciate you so much, my friend. Okay, let's get back to the episode. Okay, let's talk about what we actually do with all of this, because I know what some of you may be thinking. Okay, Shola, I hear you, but what about the people who genuinely believe that DEI is harmful? How do we bridge that gap? How do we have these conversations without losing our mind or our relationships? Great question. And the answer is going to sound very kindness extremist, because it is. Stay with me, because this is where the real work happens. If you're still anti-DEI after everything I've shared so far, I want to offer a suggestion, and I mean this with sincere love and respect, not condescension. My suggestion is this: turn off cable news, step away from satellite radio, exit the social media echo chambers that are designed to keep you angry and engaged, not informed and thoughtful, and actually talk to someone who may not look like you, pray like you, or love like you. I know this sounds simplistic, but hear me out. In my book, Civil Unity, I talk extensively about the power of what psychologists call contact hypothesis. Research has shown repeatedly that meaningful contact with individuals from different groups doesn't just reduce prejudice towards those specific people, it reduces prejudice towards the entire group. It's one of the most validated findings in social psychology. But here's the catch: the contact needs to be meaningful. Simply existing in the same space as someone different from you isn't enough. You'd be shocked, or not, at how many people have told me, "Joel, I got a black coworker, isn't that good enough?" Or, "There's a person with a disability on my floor, I see them all the time, doesn't that work?" No, that doesn't work. Sharing oxygen with someone who's different from you is nowhere close to good enough. Real connection requires vulnerability, curiosity, and a genuine willingness to learn. It requires you to see the other person as a full human with their own story, their own struggles, their own dreams, not as a representative of some group you formed opinions about from a distance. What if, and hear me when I say this, what if instead of forming opinions about people based on what talking heads tell you about those people, air quotes, you actually sat down and listened to someone's lived experience with an open heart and an open mind? What would happen if you asked a colleague with a disability about the barriers that they face every single day? Not as an interrogation, to be clear, but with genuine human curiosity. What would you learn if you had a sincere conversation with a veteran about their mental health journey and the stigma that they face when trying to get help? How might your perspective shift if you really heard, truly listened to what it's like to be overlooked, underestimated, or dismissed because of factors completely outside of your control? I promise you, if you approach these conversations with genuine curiosity instead of defensive arguments, if you listen more than you actually talk, if you ask questions instead of making statements, you will learn something useful. You might even make a new friend in the process. And how cool would that be? And here's the thing about scapegoating that I need to address directly, because this is where a lot of the anti-DEI energy is coming from. Whatever problems you're facing in your life right now, financial stress, job insecurity, family challenges, health concerns, feeling like the world is changing too fast, I can assure you that DEI is not the cause of those problems. Using DEI as a scapegoat for the world's problems is the weakest trend ever, and I mean that sincerely. It's just lazy thinking. It's looking for someone to blame instead of actually understanding and engaging in the hard work of solving problems. It's letting yourself be manipulated by people who benefit from keeping you angry at the wrong targets. And if you're doing this, and I say this with kindness and respect, please stop. You're better than that. The path to a kinder world isn't paved with division, blame, and willful misunderstanding. It's built through connection, empathy, and the hard work. Yes, the hard work of seeing each other's full humanity, even when that's uncomfortable, even when it challenges our assumptions. So here's the third kindness strategy of the episode. This month, commit to having one meaningful conversation with someone whose life experience is significantly different from yours. Not a debate, a conversation. Listen more than you talk. Ask questions instead of making statements, and approach it with a genuine goal of understanding, not convincing. You might be surprised at what you learn about them and about yourself. Okay, my friend, let's recap the 3 myths that we destroyed today that are trying to divide us and the truths that replace them. First, DEI is not the enemy of meritocracy, it's its greatest ally. Without DEI, meritocracy is just a feel-good story that we tell ourselves while perpetuating systems that were never fair to begin with. DEI ensures that the best person actually has a shot at winning regardless of where they started or what barriers they face. Second, DEI is far bigger than race. It includes accommodations and considerations that benefit everyone, from wheelchair ramps to mental health support to baby changing tables in men's restrooms. When you fight against DEI, you're actually fighting against yourself and the people who you love, whether you realize it or not. And third, the path forward requires open hearts, open minds, and real human connection. Turn off the noise, step outside your bubble, and have meaningful conversation with people whose experiences differ from yours. That's how we build understanding. That's how we build bridges. That's how we create the kinder world that we say we all want. So here's your homework this week. Practice all 3 takeaways that we discuss. Challenge someone who claims DEI is anti-meritocracy by asking them, how do they ensure qualified candidates aren't filtered out before they get a chance? Second, make a list of DEI-related accommodations that have benefited you or your loved ones. And 3, commit to having one genuine conversation with someone whose life experience is different from yours. And if you're already on board with DEI, here's something else for you. Don't stay silent when you hear the myths being spread. Speak up, share your experience, not with anger or condescension, but with the kind of patient, persistent truth-telling that actually changes minds. As mentioned in episode 11 of this podcast, the people spreading misinformation are very, very loud, but we need to be louder, not with volume, but with clarity, consistency, and with compassion. I want to leave you with this thought. Creating a kinder world is not optional work, and it isn't easy work either, but it is necessary work. And we cannot create a world where everyone is treated with dignity and respect while simultaneously fighting against the very systems designed to make that possible. DEI isn't a threat to kindness. DEI is kindness in action. It's the recognition that everyone deserves a fair shot, that accommodations aren't special treatment, and that our differences make us stronger, not weaker. If you're committed to being a kindness extremist, and if you're listening this far in the episode, I'm assuming that's the case, then you're committed to fighting for a world where equity and inclusion aren't just buzzwords, they're lived realities for everyone. I believe in your ability to do this work. I believe in your capacity for growth, empathy, and change. And I believe that together we can push back against the myths, the misinformation, and the division that's keeping us from becoming the kind of society that we're capable of being. This is your host, Shola Richards, aka Brother Teresa, and you now know that kindness can't be weak because you just experienced the strength of the Kindness Extremist Podcast. Until next time, my friend, the journey to a kinder world continues. Thank you for listening to the Kindness Extremist Podcast. I really hope that you enjoyed this episode, and I have one favor to ask of you. If you could kindly hit the subscribe button, leave a rating and a review, not only would that be incredibly kind, but by doing so, you're actively playing a role in growing this movement and ideally getting us one step closer to creating a kinder world. I hope to see you next week for another episode of the Kindness Extremist Podcast. Bye for now.